So I've been given 2 hours actually for this topic. Actually, this is quite a rather straightforward topic because it just gives the structure of the research manuscript or research paper. And when I look at your schedule, your plan for today and tomorrow, it seems like it's actually a good, well-planned workshop because it covers all the important component in the research method, in the research papers. It started off with me giving you the overall picture of what a paper looks like. And then it goes to the first component, which is actually abstract and introduction by Prof. Sanusi. And then it goes into the literature review. And then it goes to research method, research findings, conclusion, discussion and conclusion. So all of this is following the right sequence of research paper. So what I would do with you is just to give an overview of all these components. I will talk a bit about the abstract, I will talk a bit about the introduction, about literature review, research method, research findings, discussion and conclusion. So I will cover all of that as an overview, and then later on, when you already have some ideas of what they are, you'll be able to, could we have this slide later? I think that one I will talk to maybe Farah will handle this. Okay, so after I give you an overview, and then when you go into the other speakers talking specifically on that, you'll be able to have a better understanding of what it is and how to do it better. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a brief structure. So regardless, I'm not sure how many of you actually have done a research paper before. If you have done a paper for conferences, or maybe a non-indexed journal, if you have done it before, regardless whether it has been published or not, you will find that the structure are actually similar. Even though it's actually a conference paper, the structure is similar. What's different is that the intensity, the quality of the paper could be different, because usually the quality expected for research paper would be higher. Okay, they expected a better writing. They expected a more rigorous research method being explained. They expected a more interesting findings as compared to conference. So conference, usually if you submit to conference, it is very rare for conference to reject you. Okay, but if you submit to journal, it's very common for you to be rejected. So it's 2 different ways. And then now, talking about journals, there are many types of journals as well. There are different levels. So if you're starting small, maybe you go for non-indexed journal. Okay, non-indexed journal means that those journal which is not indexed under Scopus, not indexed under ISI, okay, WOS. Okay, so if you go into that journal and it said, okay, this is indexed by Google Scholar, so it's actually not indexed. Okay, it's not recognized by university. Only those by ISI, WOS, by Scopus, those are considered as respectable index platform. Okay, so let's start with this one.
So most of you, I'm not sure if you are actually now in the 2nd year, 3rd year, maybe you have written a paper before. Okay, but for those who have not done, okay, this would be the first thing that you have to think about when you want to write a paper. If you go to your supervisor and they say, okay, you have done your literature, I want you to write one paper. Okay, then start your early thinking. It's not like when you want to write a paper, you just open a computer and then start writing. It doesn't work like that. Okay, there's a lot of forethought. You have to think a lot when you want to write a paper. You actually writing a paper and writing a thesis is totally 2 different things. Okay, totally 2 different things. When you, or even if you already have your thesis, okay, you already have your research done, and you already started to write your chapters. you have written your chapter 2 literature review. So you are confident, okay, I've written chapter 2, I can write a paper. And then what you do is that when your lecturer asks you to do your paper, you just take your chapter 2 and then you convert into your journal. You just take everything. It doesn't work like that. Your paper will most likely will get rejected. Okay, unless if you go for conferences. If you go to journal, most likely it will be rejected. Why? Because writing a paper and writing a chapter is different. Okay, writing a paper requires a more in-depth argument. If you write one paragraph in your chapter, you might just take 1 or 2 sentences from that paragraph to your paper. Okay, it's because your one sentence in a journal usually need to be really beefed up, really concise, and every sentences lead you somewhere, lead you deeper. When you talk about conferences, as well as when you talk about chapters, you might have introduction on just construction industry in Malaysia, and you can have 2 paragraphs or 2 pages. You have 2 pages on just introduction of construction industry, what they are. But when it comes to paper, you only need maybe 1 sentence to just cover what is construction industry. Okay, so that's why writing a paper is more difficult than writing a chapter. So how do you start? How do you start writing your paper? So first thing first, if your supervisor said, okay, you are ready, you have some data. Okay, when I said data, it doesn't actually mean data from fieldwork. It can also cover data from your literature. When you have your literature, I think someone asked just now to PM Hanizam, if let's say you have not done your fieldwork, can you write a paper because you only have done only literature review? Actually can, yes, because there is one category of paper that is called conceptual paper. Okay, conceptual paper is paper that is basically based on your literature. But of course, as I said, it's not the same as your chapter 2. So the literature must be really firm up, okay, when you write your paper. Actually, when you do your chapter 2, and then when you do your paper for conceptual paper, you will find that your journal will be more in-depth, more interesting, and based on that one, you will later upgrade or update your chapter 2. Then your chapter 2 become better. Okay, so it actually helps. Because some people say, is it better to write a journal first or a paper first before chapter 2? Actually, you can do the other way, but at the end, the whole process will help to improve your chapter 2 in the future. So when the lecturer asks you, do I work alone? When they ask you to write a paper, so does that mean that you have to work alone? Do you have to do the paper on your own? As a student, as a master and PhD student, you are expected to do the work, not your supervisor. Because some students state that, okay, I have a supervisor will help me. Supervisor is just to help you again, help you and assist you. But the writing must come from you. And your supervisor can help to polish, help you to indicate where your paper is weak, where you can improve it. Or if your discussion is detailed enough, if your writing on introduction is good enough, or is it just very surface? Okay, the paper must lead to somewhere. Every paragraph must lead to somewhere. It brings the reader to a deeper understanding of your topic. So do you work alone? Basically, at the beginning, yes. Okay, you write first. You come up with your draft of the paper. Then you start discussing with your supervisor. You can discuss with your supervisor before that. Let's say your supervisor asks you to write a paper. Maybe you can have a discussion first. Okay, how do I do the paper? What angle? What angle of your topic that you want to actually do that paper is all about? You just want to talk about components? Do you want to talk about the challenges? Do you just want to talk about the methods? Do you want to talk about the concept? No, the theory? So find the angle, discuss with your supervisor, decide on the area that you have more information on. Okay, don't go for the area that you have little information, because the one that you have more is better. Okay, because you want to write the paper, and paper usually about 5,000 words. Okay, so where can you get all this discussion is by having all the information that you already have before that, and then later on improve further so you can have a much better paper. So you started with a discussion with supervisor, and then once you already some sort like have an idea what the angle is all about, then you start writing. Once you have the draft, and then you meet your supervisor again, then let your supervisor review the paper, and then the discussion will go on. So that only then your supervisor can come into the picture, and then you can have a better, you can sort of like work together. But at the beginning, you might work alone. Now, if you have also co-supervisor, then you could also have your co-supervisor to assist you. Might be in terms of polishing the paper, might be in terms of helping you to proofreading the paper, okay? But majority of it is for you to work on your own, okay? Paid or free journal, So this is again, when you already have ideas on the paper, when you already have drafted the paper, okay, you can start thinking whether you go for paid or free journal. Paid journal doesn't mean predatory, okay? Sometimes good journal also have to be paid, but it's not because they ask you to be paid once it's accepted. It's because you can choose. Let's say if you go for Q1 paper, they accept the paper, and then they would ask you, do you want to go for golden access, or you just want to go for normal access? Normal access, you don't have to pay. The paper will go into Scopus or ISI platform, okay? So people can actually have a look at the paper and can download from that website. But if you want to go for paid, if you want to pay for golden access, for example, that means that the paper can go into even Google Scholars, anybody can access the paper. So it's not limited to just the certain website. So you can have a wider audience. So you can choose. But to go for that one, you have to make sure you have a really good journal paper, okay? But if it's predatory, it means that usually when you go for that paper, they would just say, okay, the paper will be accepted. Any papers that has been accepted will be, we have to pay fee for 1,500 ringgit, 2,500 ringgit. And then, do you want to go for that kind of paid journal or not? If, let's say, it's still Scopus, but you have to pay, you have to talk to your supervisor. If your supervisor has got a grant, maybe it can help you to pay for the journal. And usually the paid journal are easier to publish than the free journal, because free journal are usually the higher ranking journal, okay? So too many data or no data. Okay, so if you have done your research, you have done your field work, you would have data. You can have a lot of data, but you don't know which one, which angle. Don't write all your data in one journal. You are wasting your data. Okay, so slice up the data. Okay, so maybe you have in one field work, you have information on decision making, you have information on components, you have decision on practices. Okay, so if you lump all of that in one paper, just because you want to go for Q1, if you lump up all the paper, then you have no data after that for other papers. So you can slice. Maybe you just go for the practices for one paper. Maybe you can go for challenges for another paper. So maybe you can go for strategy for another paper. So you have 3 papers from your fieldwork instead of just one. Even so, each one can actually still go for Q1, Q2. It's how you write, how you strengthen your point. So you can still go for higher journal even though you target only one specific element of your information. No data, what I mean here, if you are actually doing your literature, okay, you do your literature and then you think that you have no data because it's just literature. So if you have this one, you can actually go for conceptual paper. You can go for conceptual paper and look into, if you don't know what a conceptual paper looks like, you just go into journals, try to find conceptual paper and look at what is written there. Okay, then you'll be able to, even it's not everything from chapter 2 goes into your conceptual paper. Certain angle, maybe just talk about challenges of BEAM. Okay, you have a lot of papers done on challenges of BEAM or BEAM. Okay, so all the literature that you get, all the papers that you get, you compile and then you discuss those papers and you can come up with they call it a systematic review papers. Okay, so maybe there are certain angles, you can see some trends of that BEAM related paper. for example. Okay, so you actually can have data from your literature. So when can it get published? So this one is actually quite an important question. When you look into your journal, you can see a pattern. Some of the journal is published twice a year. Some of the journal published 4 times a year. Some 6 times a year. Some even monthly. Okay, so the more frequent the paper, for example, like every month, usually it's not really a high level journal. High level journal usually about say 4 times a year. That one usually Q1, but of course there are Q1 which is 6 times a year. But it's very rare to have every month. Those every month are usually predatory or the one that is just making money journal. Okay, so but if you are critical, you want to get your paper published by before you complete your study, before your viva, and you only have 6 months to go, then maybe you can try to find a journal that perhaps can get accepted, not really published, can get accepted before your viva, for example. So, and at least you can include that in your viva by telling that your paper has been accepted. Which impact journal to target? Okay, there are various journal and various impact factor. People usually go for Scopus or maybe ISI, but actually USM, we are only recognize impact in terms of Q, Q percentage. They just go for ISI. Okay, so has the data been published? Well, this is very important. If let's say you already have a data on practices, for example, or BIM challenges, for example, and then you publish that data, in a paper, and then later on you want to write another paper and use the same data, you cannot do that. Okay, that is your own self-plagiarism and you can get blacklisted. So this is early thinking. Before you actually embark on your paper, you think first, what do you have? Where do you want to go? How critical is it for it to be published? Okay, which impact journal you want to target? Okay, and then once you have all this sort of like planned out, then you can move on. These are the most common reason why people actually delay their writing, delay writing. Maybe, oh, I don't have time. Now is COVID problem. Everybody work at home, so my family is at home. I have to look at my kids. They have to study. They also have online classes, so I don't have time to write my paper. So that is excuse game. It's too long to get published Scopus, which is true. Mostly in high impact journal will take some time for you to get published. If your paper can be published in 1 month after you submit, that is usually a predatory journal because pay, publish. But usually the range is about 6 months to 1 year. Okay, that is quite common, 6 months to 1 year. And then English is a problem. So you write, sometimes what you want to say is not actually being relayed. So your reader doesn't understand what you're trying to say. So because of that, the paper might get rejected. Okay, or you might have problem writing the paragraph. Don't have data to work on. This can no longer excuse because you can actually write conceptual paper. And then the most common one is because the previous paper has been rejected, so you have no mood to proceed. This is normal. I don't think even any lecturers that have a paper that is accepted every time. There must be a paper that has been rejected before. But of course, there are papers that when they submit is accepted. But accepted and then later on you have to do the corrections. But the important when you want to submit a paper, when you write, first time when you write, and when the paper looks good enough, your lecturers also say it's good enough, and then for you to submit. When you submit, your first target is actually to make sure that the paper is accepted with minor correction. Even if a major correction is still a win. Even a major correction is still a win. What we don't want is total rejection. Okay, total rejection or do not publish category. Okay, because if it's major, you can still resubmit. You just need improve and you can resubmit. It's very, very, very rare, or you might be living in your own imaginary world to get the paper accepted at first submission. Okay, I'm talking about high ranking journal. I'm not talking about predatory. Predatory, usually when you submit, you get accepted. Talking about high ranking journal, it's very, very rare for paper to be accepted as it is. Best case scenario is minor correction. But even though it's a major correction, it's not a rejection for you. Don't worry. At least it's still in the running. If it's rejected, then you definitely have to go for a different journal. Okay, leceh lah, this is biasa lah. I mean, some people just say that, okay, I use this excuse because it's difficult to write, okay. So how to start? How to start? First of all, you have to decide on your angle, okay. And then find your journal, brainstorm your content, and structure your manuscript. Okay, let's talk about decide your angle. This is basically related to your data. Okay, what data do you have? If you have raw data, meaning that coming from your fieldwork, it's more, it has a wider option for you, because with the data you have, then you can decide. Is it, for example, is it a challenges? Is it a strategy? Is it a practice? Is it I don't know, limitation? I don't know, whatever data that you have, the raw data, and then you'll be able to decide which part of that data that you want to use for your paper. Decide on that angle first. You have not writing anything yet, but you need to decide what you want to write without actually writing it. Okay, if you don't have any fieldwork and your target is actually just literature, look at your literature, decide which part of that literature you want to focus on, okay, then start from there. Okay, once you know, okay, I have my paper is just conceptual paper, okay, so don't go for journals that you think will go for only raw data, fieldwork. Because if you start looking into journals, you will find that some journals, they favor conceptual papers. So go for that kind of journal, because you are writing conceptual. If you are writing conceptual, and then you want to go for a journal that is, when you look at the papers, are all basically must have research finding. Must have research finding. Okay? So if you go for that kind of journal, it's very, very likely for the paper to be rejected, because they want papers with new data, okay, raw data. So you need to find which journal is suitable in your for your angle, right? Now, brainstorm your content. Okay, now you already decided your angle. You look at your information, then you start brainstorming your content. Which part? This is where your mind mapping or your planning come into the action. You don't actually have to write yet. Just have a piece of paper, start planning out, okay, what information that you have, where you can need, where you don't have, which one you need to add. So you need to brainstorm. And then lastly, you structure your manuscript. So when you decide your angle, you can look at the types of the paper. Basically, there are 4 categories. Okay, research paper, conceptual paper, viewpoint, and case study. All right. So the common one are actually research paper and conceptual paper. Those are the 2 common ones. Okay, research paper are basically articles that report on any type of research undertaken by you. So it can be research paper that talk about findings from survey, or findings from interview, findings from focus study. Okay, so usually when you talk about research paper, there must be some data from fieldwork. Okay, and then it can be a mix of literature. It is a mix of literature and findings from fieldwork. So there must be original data. And it follows the sequence usually in bright format, introduction, methods, results, and discussion. So these are the 4 key components of research paper. But if you look into conceptual papers, basically you still have methods, results, and discussion, but the way you write will be different. Okay, so conceptual paper are basically data from secondary sources. Secondary sources refers to journals, conferences, books. Okay, so those are the secondary sources. So the aim is to develop a hypothesis, conceptual framework, or philosophical discussion, systematic comparison of previous others' work. So when you do conceptual paper, when you do your conceptual paper, there a question, is it? maybe we can save the question later, right? When you do a conceptual paper, it doesn't actually have, it doesn't have to be only because you want to come up with a conceptual framework, okay? It doesn't have to come up with only conceptual framework. It can be, if you look into what you call a systematic literature papers, you have a lot of literature. Let's say you have 60 journals, okay? You can actually discuss the trends. You can discuss what has been, what's the progress of research in that field, okay? So at the end, you won't actually come up with a conceptual paper, conceptual framework. You won't come up with a conceptual framework, but you are coming out with a new data about the trends of that particular topic. So that is a systematic literature review. That is also a conceptual paper. And there is also another paper. This is a really come up with a conceptual framework. It means that you discuss theory, you discuss concept relating to that topic, and then you link with the theory and you come up with a conceptual framework to gel or to bring or integrate all the things that you have discussed on that topic and to illustrate that into a framework. So that is also what we call a conceptual paper. So there are two different categories. Viewpoint is just perception. It's just perception paper. It's actually not really a conceptual. It's not really a research. It's more on the ideas discussing about a certain topic. Okay, so it's more on a view. And because this is a view, it doesn't come out from a layman people. It doesn't come out from a student. It usually come out from professors, the one that is really expert in that field. So what they say counts. So they are invited by the journal to discuss certain ideas. So to give a view of that topic. So that is a viewpoint. And another one is case study. Case study is describe or explain or elaborate on the actual experience of certain project or certain case study, okay, or certain building, for example. Okay, so that is a case study. So I think in your case, you are basically focused on either research paper or conceptual paper. Okay, so the first thing first, when you decide on your angle is the direction of the paper. Okay, what the ultimate aspect that this paper will focus on. Okay, let's say you've already decided it's going to be a conceptual paper. Fine, that is the first decision, conceptual paper. Then what is the angle in that conceptual paper? Okay, what to include and what to exclude, the scope. Okay, if you don't have a scope, your paper will be very surface because it's just stretched like that. When you write a paper, we don't want the paper to be just monotonous. We want to make sure it goes deeper and deeper. Okay, so because of that, you need to know what your limitation, what to include, what to exclude. Okay, so the things that can explain further of that particular angle, you include. The thing that would deviate or to make it move away from your topic, because sometimes when you already have your data in your chapter 2, for example, there's so many tools of green building in Malaysia or in the world. Okay, so you have that data, but your paper is not actually about the tools. But because you already have that one in chapter 2, you tend to put those data on tools in your literature, in your journal. In fact, you just need actually perhaps maybe a paragraph just to highlight what the progress of green building tools are. But instead of that, you elaborate too long when your scope of the paper is not about the green rating tools. Okay, so that is what you need to know, what to include, what to exclude, and if you want to include up to certain what level. Okay, main contribution, of course, this is all related to your angle. No duplication from previous published articles. Why? Because when the journal's editor do the turning in, if let's say you already have one paper done on certain topic, on your topic, and then you want to do another paper, you tend to take maybe a few paragraphs from your previous previous papers into the new one, because it's difficult to write a new sentences. Okay, it's difficult to write new paragraph when it's just introduction. Okay, you might just take that one, put this one, still introduction, it doesn't go into detail, but still when you duplicate, that thing can go into turning in, it can go into detection of plagiarism. So that's why even if you want to take the same, even though if you have the same points from the previous papers, you want to write the new papers, you have to rephrase. Okay, so no duplication. And then I think most of the students, they tend to focus on country. Let's say you are from Pakistan and your research is on Pakistan, your paper is on Pakistan. All right. But when you write a journal, they want to see how your paper benefited other countries. So the paper must be focused enough to your country, but at the same time, the output of that study, the output of your research could be beneficial to other countries, or maybe other third world countries or other developing countries. Okay, if you have a concept, you come up with a conceptual framework, and that conceptual framework is to be used for your research, for a study in India. But because you're doing conceptual paper, you don't actually have to link to India, because it's still conceptual paper. But you have to write in the way that that conceptual framework that you have come out is actually can be applied to any other study in other country as well. Okay, so your finding you must be able to discuss, to generalize at how it can benefit other countries, even though you are actually focusing on your country. So how do you find a journal? I think one of the speakers tomorrow talk about finding journals, okay, and talk about impact factors. So I'm not going to talk much about that, but I just want to give you some sequence that you can follow when you want to find your journal. First thing first, don't go for predatory journal. This is very, very important. There are so many predatory journals in the world. If you receive email on a daily basis, you are invited to publish paper, blah, 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 blah. And then the paper only take 2 to 3 days to review. If you know, if the review process is less than 10 days, there's something is wrong there. Okay, so it's most likely is predatory. Okay, predatory journal is not actually being accepted. Okay, so you might waste your maybe you think that, oh, I still need to publish a paper, so doesn't matter, I submit to this one, I can get it accepted in 10 days. I just pay 1,500, so I get a paper. Now, the data that you use for that paper, the paper will not be counted as index paper. Okay, it's just going to be a other papers category, which is category very, very low. Okay, and the important part is you have wasted your data. You might have been using a good data for that particular journal, in which you can actually use that data for better journal. But because you already use it, remember when you use it, you cannot use the data anymore. Okay, so you waste your good data on a journal which is not actually recognizable. Okay, so that's why you really need to plan out, avoid predatory journal. And there are so many telltales to know that it's a predatory journal. If let's say you find that journal, you say, oh, the process is 1 month. Okay, it's not 10 days, it's 1 month, it's possible. And then it said that it is indexed under Scopus. Always go to Scopus, find that journal, see whether that journal is really in the list of Scopus. And if it's really in the list, check whether it's still valid, because they might be indexed in Scopus 2015, but for 2020, even 2019, it's already been deactivated. It's already been out from the list. But in the website, they still claim that they are Scopus. So that one is definitely removed from your list. Okay. Always search for potential, for respectable publishers like Springer, Taylor and Francis, Emerald. I know it's not easy, it's difficult, but always try to go for respectable publishers. These are the common ones. And then you can confirm that the journal is good by looking into all those databases like Scopus, Science Direct, Emerald Insight. From there, you can see whether the papers is actually still active or not in that database. And then you can use keyword to search for potential journal. Let's say your papers is on cost, project cost, okay? So maybe you can type project cost and see what sort of journal that may be, most of the journal, when you do your papers, you can see where did you get your sources. And then those journal that you use for your references, those journal could be the potential journal for your paper, because you find a paper for your research from those journals. So those journal, meaning that those journal publish similar topic. So that could be a way for you to find a potential journal for you. And then know their quota ranking, okay, whether it is accepted under USM, such as Scopus, ERA, ISI. Now Malaysia, there's also have my site, so you can also check my site if the paper is accepted there. And then it's always good to narrow into 3 possible journals. Okay, don't just use one. Narrow into 3, and then check that check the papers that has been published there to decide if your paper is suitable. This one I've already highlighted before. Okay, check for specific requirements. For example, now some journals, they just want ethical proof, meaning you have to show proof that this paper has been, this research actually has been approved by the ethical committee of the university. Some journals want that. Okay, so you have to check. Some journals want your photo as in your your biography. Okay, so check for specific requirements. Okay, and then okay, once the manuscript is done, you go back to your 3 narrow journals. Okay, and then from there you decide one. Okay, which one you think is most suitable for that particular journal, and then you revise the paper according to the journal template, and then submit your papers. Okay, so this is how you decide on your journal. Okay, which journal you want to go for your paper. So once you when you want to submit the paper, once you revise the paper to follow the template of the journal, okay, first thing first, of course, you have to go to the website, to the journal website, see their manuscript structure, because some journals, they have, when you write in the text, when you have references, you have to put bracket, for example, Ali, 2009, okay? But some journals, instead of Ali, 2009, it becomes just 1, because that's the first references appear in that journal, okay? So different journal have a different format. Okay, so you look at that format and you follow that one. Draft your own structures, type mapping. Okay, this is brainstorming your content. When you have studied the manuscript structure, because you have planned out, okay, then you have, this is the structure for your article. Okay, you need to have introduction, you need to have, of course, abstract, you need to have all those things, right? Methods, findings, discussion, okay? Then you draft your own structure based on the journal structure. Okay, for your information, or sorry, for your introduction, what do you want to highlight in your introduction? When you want to talk about literature, what is it that you want to highlight? So this is where the mind mapping comes into the picture. Have a blank piece of paper or a few blank pieces of paper and start mind mapping. Lead up. Okay, for introduction, I need to talk about problem. If the problem, what is the problem you want to highlight? I need to talk about the method that you want to talk about. So these are the methods. I need to talk about, for the literature, I need to talk about A, B, C, different aspects. Okay, so plan out your mind mapping. This is very important for you to do the paper. Without the mind mapping, your paper could be will not be focused enough. Okay, and then try to draw diagrams or tables. Try to make sure that your paper is not just narrative, meaning that only words from beginning until the end. You need to have tables, you need to have diagram. Wherever possible that you can have a diagram, you include the diagram. It can impress the reader. It can impress the reviewer. Okay, when you have a diagram, especially if the diagram is your diagram, not the one that you just take from other authors. If you have the sources, we know that it's actually taken from other authors. So it's not actually your diagram. You'll be more interested to see your own diagram. For example, if you talk about your literature review, based on all the things that you have explained, you summarize in one diagram. Then it also looks nice. Okay, the more diagram you have, the more table you have, the more interesting, because you'll be able to summarize or synthesize your own findings. Okay, visualize your content, and then lastly you start writing. So once you have all the things planned out, then you start writing. So this is the structure of your manuscript. You have a title, the authors and affiliations, abstract, keywords, introduction, literature review, research methods, results, discussion, conclusion, acknowledgement, author profile, and references. So these are all the sequence. Okay, start with the title. How important is your title? In your paper, it is very, very important. That is the first thing that people will see, that will attract people to read your paper. So all of this, I think abstract, introduction will be covered by another lecturer. This one by, another speaker. This one also, one speaker will talk about it. Research method also, there's one speaker will talk about it. This one also, one speaker will talk about it. And these two also, one speaker will talk about it. So by the end of these 2 days, we hope that you'll be able to have a clear understanding of what is expected in your papers. Okay, and you'll be able to write the paper in a proper in a proper planning manner. Okay, so you can plan better and you can write better. So at the end of phase 2, later on, you'll be able to come up with a good paper for publication. So let's start with title. Okay, how to choose the title for my manuscript. Okay, at the beginning, because you already have some sort of like angle, okay, of what your topic or what your paper is all about, regardless whether it's from the raw data, from fieldwork, or whether it's just a conceptual paper, you have some sort of idea what to write. So based on that one, you'll be able to have some basic idea on what your title should be. The title should be reflective of your content. So because you already know your angle, you sort of like have an idea of your content, so you'll be able to come up with one draft title. I would say draft, it's not final yet. Draft title. And then, of course, at the end of the day, you have to make sure that your title is not just reflective to your content, it's attractive enough to attract the readers. If your title is too complicated, or the way you structure your title is confusing, the reader might be put off. Or if, let's say, your paper is all about project management, and your title doesn't have project management at all. If one of the students try to find, if another, let's say, another academician want to do a paper on project management, and because they type keyword project management, and because your title doesn't have project management, your paper might be excluded from the pool of papers to be included in that author's, the other new readers compilation. Okay, so you have to make sure that the title is reflective to your content and the title is attractive enough for the readers. So title is basically the first thing that people will see, right? When you want to write a paper, you can develop first the title, but it's just a draft. And this draft title is just to help you focus on your paper. The title could be as mundane title, for example, project management, or challenges in asynchronous online classes. Okay, just plain title like that. Challenges of asynchronous online classes. Then later on, you write your paper. After you write your paper, at the end of the day, then you revisit back, or then you find, okay, even though the title, it is true, it is about asynchronous online classes, the challenges, but actually you go deeper than just challenges. So you might need to change investigating the perception of blah, 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 blah. Okay, so it becomes slightly longer title, but it's more spot on. Okay, so you can revisit and finalize your title. So it's the first thing that you do, and it's the last thing that you do. So another way for you to decide how to write or how to develop an interesting title is by using keywords. The keywords come from your paper as well. What is the thing that is being repetitively talked about? Okay, so that's the keyword, and that keywords can reflect to your title. And it is you can draft about 4 to 5 possible title by playing around with your keywords. Okay, usually for me, in my case, when I want to start a paper, I would usually have like 3 or 4 titles. Just play with the title, and then later on, some of the title might be merged. Okay, some of the title totally removed, and perhaps all of that actually at the end being removed because you come up with a new, more interesting title which covers the whole spectrum of the paper. Okay, but it's good to have 4 or 5 possible title at the beginning. And then if your paper, okay, the title should reflect whichever type of the paper. If remember, there are conceptual, research, opinion, okay, the perception, viewpoint, or perhaps a case study. All right. Regardless of whatever type, your title should be reflective to that. When you read the paper, if I'm just a reader, I just look at the title, I have some idea. Oh, this one would be conceptual. This one would be case study. This one would be a normal research paper, just by looking at the title. So you must craft your title in the way it can give that kind of impression to the reader. So I'll give you the example here. Now, can you differentiate between research and conceptual paper by looking at this title? Food waste matters, a systematic review of household food waste practices and their policy and implication. The second one is optimizing architects' building material specification strategy through knowledge management principles. So the first thing here, this is conceptual. There's a systematic review here. When you have the word review, you know it's actually a conceptual paper, right? And then this one is a research paper. So this one is optimizing architects' building materials. So this is really look into a research. They are researching on the strategy using this knowledge management principles. So this one is a research paper. The other one is a conceptual paper. From the title, you have some idea or perception about the type of the paper. Okay, so you have to make sure when you are writing your own paper, when you are trying to come up with your title, you have to plan out in a way that it gives the readers what type of paper that is. That is one. Number two, it is reflective to the content. And number three, is it interesting enough to capture the attention of the reader? So if you look at this one, project management, cost, time and quality, 2 best guesses, and a phenomenon. It's time to accept other success criteria. And the second one is water quality assessment and apportionment of pollution sources of county rivers using multivariate statistical techniques, a case study. If there is no word case study here, if there is no word of case study, okay, of course, based on this title, you know that it's a case study paper because there's a case study here. Okay, if there is no case study here, the word of Gomti River, India, basically is specific to one place. It could still be a case study, but it could also be a research study because river is long. It could be different angle, but because they have a name, it's most likely it is a case study paper. So this one is a bit tricky. Is it a research? Is it a conceptual? But it's actually a viewpoint because it's give a view. The title itself actually shows an opinion paper. Cost, time and quality, 2 best guesses and phenomena, it's time to accept other success criteria. It's actually their view on this project management. So this is a viewpoint and this is a case study. So there are 4 examples here for you to see how the title reflects the type of the paper. Okay, so when you want to write your paper, when you want to write your title, think about all of this so that you'll be able to come up with an interesting title. And if you look at this one, sorry, if you look at this title, it's not a generic title. Yeah, it's not just challenges of project management in Malaysia. It's not generic title like that. It's very specific. Even the previous one is quite a specific title. Okay, what they want in the title, usually the editors want is a specific title which really narrows down on your topic. Okay, so this is another point for you. The title should not be more than 14 words unless you have to, because perhaps, for example, it's related to a name of something which is a really long name. So if you cannot, then you cannot get away from that. But usually it should not be more than 14 words. And you can use this what we call a semicolon to indicate subject matter and the scope of your paper. And then keep it clear and unambiguous, and avoid using abbreviation unless the abbreviation is well known. Okay, for example, BIM, BIM, Building Information Modeling. Usually in the title we don't use BIM, we put full name. Okay, so it's very rare for the title to have abbreviation unless it is really well known. Okay, for example, IBS. Again, try to avoid using abbreviation. Give full name. Industrialized building system. Okay. So this is an example when you want to use semicolon. Okay. For example, here, delivering sustainability through value management. So this is the subject interest, and the scope is actually on the concept and performance overview. This is the concept. Same thing here. Virtual interaction. This is the subject of interest, and the scope is actually on the design factors affecting student satisfaction and perceived learning in asynchronous online courses. Okay, so when you use semicolon, you have to differentiate what the first sentence is all about. The one must be subject interest. The second one must be about the scope of paper. You cannot have two, both are actually scope of papers. Okay, so this is when you use semicolon. If you don't use semicolon, you can have a normal title, one sentences, not more than 14 words. So this is an example of title without the semicolon. So investigating the awareness and application of sustainable construction concept by Malaysian developers. So be specific with your title. So for example, instead of just having the progress of sustainable construction in Malaysia, this title is a more detailed title. Okay, so be specific. Okay, again, another example. So instead of just energy performance of green roof thermal properties, the title becomes analysis of green roof thermal properties and investigation of its energy performance. So again, when you have the title, this could be your first draft title. This could be your first draft title, one of the 3 or 4 draft titles. But at the end, you have to make sure that the title captures the key component of your papers, right? So authors and affiliation. Okay, authors and affiliation, there is no limit in terms of the number of authors. I've seen sciences papers that can have 20 authors, but commonly not more than 5. Okay, there are 3 types of authors: the main author, corresponding author, and co-author. So if you are the main author, this is the first name appear in the list. Okay, and the main author can also be the corresponding author, the one that communicates. But there are also papers in which the main author is not the corresponding author. The corresponding author could be the last in the line. Maybe there are 5 authors. Only the last one is actually the corresponding author, the person that communicates with the publisher. And the rest, if it's not first, if it's not corresponding author, they are all co-authors. Okay, co-authors are the one that have the least, perhaps the least contributions. Okay. Affiliation is basically where the place, your workplace, where your attachment place is. Okay, and if you are, all of you are actually, most of you are actually student USM, you must include your affiliation with USM. Let's say you are also a student under perhaps Indian organization. Okay, or maybe you are also under one of the organization in Malaysia. Okay, so you are here because that organization sent you here. So you can have you can have two affiliation attached to you, but make sure that you include USM as one of your affiliation. So the first one, for example, this is the main author. This is the corresponding author. How do I know that? Because there's a star here. Corresponding author is usually indicated by a star. And then the rest are actually the co-author. Okay. So this Martin, Dan, Chiangji, and Margot, these are all A. They are actually related to or affiliated with Delft University of Technology, Netherlands. But Martin is also attached to Fudan University in China. Okay. Simon is actually attached to University of Westminster, UK. Right. So this is how you read your affiliation. So abstract. Now, basically abstract is summarize all the important part of your paper. So it is a selling point because if you look into your database, if you can click into the paper, most of it you can actually get the whole paper, which is good. But even if you cannot get the whole paper, you can still get to read the abstract. From that abstract, you can decide whether you want to purchase the paper. If in the case of that paper have to be purchased, then you can purchase the paper. Or by looking at the abstract, if you are already in Scopus database or another era database or whatnot. So if you can download the paper or even from Google Scholar, if you can download the paper, you read the abstract. If the abstract is interesting, then you download the paper. Okay, so the abstract is the selling point. If the paper is interesting enough, but you have to purchase, then if the student really needs it, they will purchase that paper because of your abstract. So the abstract must be accurate, must be concise, must be straight to the point. And usually it's about 150 to 250. So it depends on the journal. Sometimes they can actually go to 300. Okay, but really rare to have more than 300. But so because of that, always target your abstract about 250. Okay, there are two types of abstract, structured and narrative type. So structured are basically answer the question style. There are a few things, then you just answer the question to complete your abstract. This is what it looks like. This is a structured abstract. So first thing first is purpose, design, methodology, approach, findings, originality, values. So some journals might have more than 4. Okay, some might have more, some might have less. Okay, so look at the format and then you can prepare your abstract. Even though it is a narrative form, it's good to have to do your abstract in structured style, because later on you just bring those two to become a narrative abstract. Okay, so this is the purpose. The purpose of this paper is to discuss the enablers of creating a viable environment for a sustainable housing industry and investigate barriers limiting this progress. So only one line talk about the purpose. Then it talks about the method. This is the key findings. And this is the originality. Okay. So this is the structured abstract. This is another structured abstract. They have a purpose and problem statement. Design, methodology, approach. This is methods, the findings, research limitation, and practical implication. So basically, this is the significance and limitation. And lastly, it has the originality. So one statement, for example, purpose, it doesn't mean that one statement, one sentence. You can have a few sentences. As long as when you add up all of this, it will not exceed 250 or 300. It depends on the number allowable by the journal. Okay. So each of these sentences, when you actually have this kind of structured abstract, it guides you to your abstract. So your abstract will not be too lengthy or will not be unfocused. Because if you go into narrative style, okay, this is narrative style. The first line here is still problem statement. And then the second line is the purpose. Then the third line is method. And then you have the findings. and then the significance. So basically, whether you have narrative or structured, the format are actually, the information that they want are basically the same or similar. So that's why, even if you need to do abstract narrative style, it's good for you to practice the structured style. You can have this one right first, so it helps you structure, it helps you focus on your abstract. Then you remove the heading here, purpose, finding, you remove them to become narrative style abstract. Because I have seen a lot of abstracts being given because I've reviewed many journals, international journals. Abstract is always a problem because when they do the narrative style, they tend to have perhaps literature review half of the abstract. They have only one line for findings, for example, one line for methods. There's no discussion on significance. This one particularly more critical when you want to do conceptual paper because there is no raw data. Even though there is no method in the way that research method in which to explain how the interview is being conducted, how survey is being conducted, the method is still there to discuss about how the literature is being handled. Okay, so basically, whether it's conceptual or findings, you still need this kind of heading to guide you in the development of your abstract. So bear in mind, no references in abstract. I've seen abstract with references. It's a big no. Okay. Do not copy paste from the body of the article. Ensure keywords is in the abstract. Similar with title, draft abstract first to ensure direction of the paper, then finalize it after the article completes. And it's important to make sure there is no spelling and grammatical error. So no references abstract, that one is quite straightforward because I've seen abstract with references, that one is definitely out. Do not copy paste. The reason why you should not copy paste from your article itself, because abstract is, you have to see abstract as an overview part of your paper. It tells the whole structure of your paper, the whole content of your paper, but in just 250 words. So if you start copying from your from what you have written from introduction, what you have written in the literature, if you start copying that, your abstract will be too lengthy and will be unfocused. So you have to think, when you do your abstract, you have to think as a blank piece of paper to tell the reader what the paper is all about. So that's why there's no copy paste. Should be your own word to reflect the content. Okay. And when you draft the paper, if you draft the abstract, draft first, then you do the paper. Because some people say you do the paper first, then you draft your abstract. In my case, my suggestion is draft the abstract first. It guides you on what you want to do in your paper. And then once you finish the paper, go back to the abstract and then improve the abstract. Okay. So in the abstract, you must have the area of research or the motivation, the problem, the gap or the research questions, the purpose, the aims and objective, the method, the results, the contribution, significance and implication. You should have all of this in your abstract within 250 words. And then select 4 or 5 keywords that express representing your paper. This is under keywords. And make sure the search engine find your paper for wider readability. And keywords must also reflective of your title and abstract. And ensure, please, not unsure, ensure, ensure that at least 3 of your keywords is in the title and abstract. What it means is that the title, the abstract, and the keywords are actually interrelated. You have to make sure that whatever in your keywords should be, at least if it's not all, majority of your keywords is in the title and it's in the abstract. And for the abstract, because it's 250 words, I think all the keywords should be in the abstract. But the title, maybe you can have 3 out of 5 or maybe 4 out of 5 keywords is in the title. That is how you link the 3 to make sure that if people use this, when people use the keywords, they can find your paper. Okay. And also to make sure that the title, the keywords and the abstract shows that how focused your paper really is. Okay. This is an example. Innovation creation. innovation adoption, and firm characteristics in the construction industry. This is a structured abstract. Okay, it has purpose, design methodology, approach, findings, originality, and value. The keyword is firm characteristics, construction industry, innovation adoption, and innovation creation. You see firm characteristics also there in the title. Firm characteristics also appear in the abstract. Construction industry appear in the abstract, appear also in the title. Innovation adoption appear in abstract and also appear in the title. Keywords for innovation creation also appear in the title, appear in the abstract. This is an example of a good abstract, title, and keywords. Sometimes, because if you look at abstract and you look at keywords and you look at title, you see them as different aspects, you will find that they are not really firm up. Your keywords may not be in the title, your keywords may not be in the abstract, or maybe only one keywords appear in the abstract. You need to make sure that when you write your paper, when you think about your title, your abstract, and your keywords, make sure they are linked up. Okay. Same thing here. Malaysia, construction industry, green projects, engagement practices, project consultant, okay, and selection criteria. So engaging is here, practice of engaging, engagement of consultant, engagement method, engagement process, engagement practice. So it's all here. The keyword here is also in the title, it's also in the abstract. Consultants, project consultant, consultant, so again appear. Okay. So Malaysia also appear. Okay. Green projects also appear. Green projects. Okay. Selection criteria, here you have selection method. Okay. Only construction industry is not here, but this is okay because that one is covers the whole thing. So when you think about the title again, keywords and abstract, they are all interrelated. So how do you improve your abstract? Again, you have to make sure you have the area of research and motivation, problem, gap, and questions, purpose, aim, and objective, method, result, contribution. You have to ask yourself, are the keywords in the abstract? Is it within 150 and 250 words? Is the abstract reflective of the title? Is the abstract free of spelling and grammatical error? So this is because I think other lecturers are not actually touching about abstract, title, and keywords. So this is where you have to make sure that, because this is where I focus more, because I think that you need to know about how to make sure your title, your keywords, and your abstract are linked up to give a really focused paper, right? So introduction. Okay, introduction, basically introduction, always introduction, a beginning of something. Okay, so it's provide an overview of the research area. It's establish the foundation of the paper. It tells you the scope. Okay, it introduces the reader of the topic. It's introduced the reader about the scope and introduce the reader about the direction of your paper. So that is the importance of introduction. And it should be presented in chronological story. Okay, from the general perspective into a specific focus. So if you want to talk about green projects in Malaysia, for example, you want to talk about green rating tools in Malaysia, for example. So you have to discuss first, perhaps, about construction industry, the green concept, and then green building, and then green rating tools. So from general, it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. Okay, so that is introduction. So should close the introduction section with the direction of the paper. So if you have, let's say, 5 paragraphs, the last paragraph should be talking about the direction of the paper. So when the reader read the last paragraph, they would know what to expect from the paper. And then depending on the journal style, it can be a short introduction and it can also be long introduction. And when it's long introduction, basically it's incorporate with literature review. Okay, whether it's a part of literature review or the whole literature review. Okay, so this is an example of a short introduction. Okay, this is an example. The second one is introduction plus literature review. So if you look at this one, it has introduction and then straight away 2.0 is methodology. So what it means is that the introduction has been combined with literature review. Here, the first one is the introduction. The second one is actually the literature review. You don't actually have to put literature review as a title. You can actually have straight away the title of whatever topic or scope that you want to focus on. But you can also have literature review as a title. It depends on the paper. Some journals, when they give the structure of your paper or the template of the paper, they want the 2.0 as literature review, and only your area or the area of your focus become the subheading, right? So this is short and this is long type. Okay, so the introduction content covers the background information, clarification of terms, definitions, and or abbreviation, problem statement, research gap, justification for the need to fill in the gap, purpose, aim and objective, approaches used to address the gap, and expected contribution and content of the paper. So the one I asterisk here are highly expected. So in any introduction that you have, you need to make sure that you have a background. You need to make sure you have a problem statement, justification, the purpose, and the approach that you use. Because sometimes in introduction, students or writers, they tend to focus on the background information, but did not discuss on the justification or did not discuss on the approach because they think it's introduction. They don't have to talk about that. No, these are the key points to make sure that your introduction is focused enough, okay, is good enough, is detailed enough, is concise enough for your paper. So this is an example for introduction. The first paragraph in this case is the background information. Okay, research gap is in the second paragraph. Justification for the need to fill in the gap. This is basically the reason why. This one is the research gap. Okay, it tells you what is there, what is not there, or what's the problem. But this one tells you why you need to address the problem. Okay, so this one is needed. And then the purpose and aim. So this is the purpose. This study attempts to do what, or this paper will do what. Okay, they investigate on what. So this one approach plus the purpose and aim. Okay, so when you have your introduction, a short version, you have to make sure your writing is concise enough to cover all these key elements. Don't elaborate too much on problem, on background information, but you're lacking on, for example, you're lacking on this one or you're lacking on this one. Sometimes because you yourself has weaker discussion on research gap when you do your chapter 1, chapter 2. Your problem statement was not strong enough. So because of that, when you want to write a paper, you have problem writing your research gap. So because of that, you miss out your research gap in your paper. So you cannot do that. You have to make sure you have that. So the same thing, all this information, background information, research gap, justification, is also there for a slightly longer introduction. You still need to have background. You still need to have problem statement. You still need to have justification, purpose, and approach. But in this case, they add on clarification of the terms. Okay, it clarifies what is public-private partnership, why is this term not familiar, what new term they are using, which organization or which institution that promote this concept. So these are all clarification of the terms. And they have last one is expected contribution. This is also covered. So regardless, when you do your paper, the most important part is this background, problem statement, justification, purpose, and approach. Now, if your research is really on new concept, new terms, this is also important, clarification of terms. So these are your introduction. So the main content of your introduction, firstly, is the background information. To give strong statement that reflect the subject area, no need to state the obvious, because sometimes, let's say you're talking about environmental problem in construction industry. So you start out your sentence by saying, construction in environment is a major problem in construction industry. It's actually quite obvious. So sometimes you don't actually have to mention the obvious fact, just straight away. Construction industry contribution to environmental can be considered as can be in the form of landslide, blah, 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 blah. So you, for example, you straight away talk about what they are instead of saying that it is a major problem, because people know it's a major problem already. Sometimes you can actually use the keywords from the title as the base point. Whatever keywords that you have, you put that one under background, because the background is basically to give the overall view, and by having the guideline, it can guide you to what you need to say for your background information. This one is the problem statement or research gap. Okay, this one is use relevant and recent literature to support your gap. When you do your research problem, when you do your gap, let's say your paper is 2021, and the gap or the problem that you're highlighting, you use a literature from year 2000 or year 2005. So it was like 16, 20 years ago. So it has, the bigger the gap is of the literature that you use, it shows that your paper may not be up to date, your research may not be up to date, because if you say there is lack of research in this field, but the sources is 2000 and 2009, okay? So there are like gap like 12 years. So perhaps there are many more research that has been done in this field, which you are not highlighting because you just want to say that there's lack of research, that's why you use 2009. Okay, that's why when you want to do your problem statement or research gap, make sure you have at least 5 years old literature only. Okay, even better if it's recent. Let's say 2021, your literature is 2020, 2019, 2021, then it shows that yes, this is really recent research gap, this is really a problem statement and it's happening now. Okay, it's not happening 10 years ago, 15 years ago, right? Justification, you have to give viable reason why you need to address the gap. Okay, first, in the green one, you highlight, yes, there is a gap. Then you have to explain why you need to address the gap. This part is usually students tend to miss. They explain there's a research gap, yes, but they didn't highlight why you need to address that gap. And the most thing that people like to do is to critique others. Okay, for example, I'm doing a paper on a holistic view of knowledge management. Previous researchers only focus on certain aspect, so their research is not cover the whole spectrum, and because they are just limiting into this one, they just not suitable for previous studies. So you just criticizing others' work and indicating that their work is not good enough because yours is better, yours going to look at the whole picture. Do not critique other people's work, and your work may not be the best anyway. Okay, so when you discuss the justification why you need to do research, you make sure that you don't critique other scholars. Okay, and then these are the aim and the purpose. Basically, what's the purpose of the paper, and the approach that you're going to use. Okay, so the approach are basically related to your research method. Okay, then literature review. So basically, review is the brief discussion based on the secondary data. Okay, so basically, when you talk about literature review, if you have your chapter 2, you can look at chapter 2 to just cover your literature review. But having said that, it's not all, because sometimes you need to rewrite. Even one paragraph could take about 10 pages of your chapter 2, because you really need to firm and beef up your literature review. And the review must capture major points, major concept, major study from the past. Okay, so you need to build up all this overall or conceptual understanding of the topic. All right, and then the review must show the progress of your area. You cannot just simply talk about perhaps just definitions, that's it. No, you need to make sure from the definition it go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper until it reach to your topic, that until it reach to your basically the narrowed part of your paper. And don't use sources from internet. Okay, the DOI is okay. I'm talking about, let's say, from Wikipedia, from any blog. Don't use that kind. Those are not reliable sources. Always use journal, conferences, the published version. And then the purpose of the literature is to improve understanding of the topic area, to update the readers, and to justify the research gap and build up your research questions. So this is the writing process. Collect your sources from reliable database. This one I've already highlighted, and try to make sure your literature is actually quite recent. Okay, more of your literature should be not more than 5 years. 10 to 6 years is acceptable, but if it's more than 10 years, just using sparingly. Okay, meaning that out of 100% of your literature, perhaps only 5%, perhaps only 10% are actually more than 10 years, for example. Okay, try to make sure the majority are actually 10 years above, okay, or 10 years below. 2000, now you're doing paper 2021, you should have papers 2016 and above, okay, 5 years. But if you cannot get, maybe your topic is really people have not done much, maybe 10 years before, but try to make sure that it's not 15 or 20 years papers, okay? And then analyze the gathered sources. Okay, most of people, when you do literature review, they tend to just say, okay, this author said what, and then this author said what, the other author said what, another author said what, and then end. Then move to the next section. You need to be able to synthesize the information. That's why if you have a diagram, if you have a table, it shows how you'll be able to accumulate, how you'll be able to synthesize and come up with a new picture to show the connectivity of all your literature reviews. Okay. Use only relevant and related sources, one that can support or critique your topic. Okay, synthesize your findings and build up to support the need to justify the importance of the paper. Okay, next one is research method. Okay, I'm going a bit faster now because all this topic will be covered by other lecturers. But even so, I only have perhaps another 30 minutes to go. Research method, okay, to inform how the research is conducted and to be transparent with the methods, and then to increase the reader confidence in the validity and viability, and to clearly present the process and steps taken to obtain the results. So if you're doing a research method, research papers, research method is very important because it will tell the reader how the research is conducted, and when the people review your paper, let's say, because before the paper is being accepted, you will be reviewed by a panel. They will look into your research method to see whether, okay, is it confident enough? Do they actually do the right process to get this data? Okay, so that's why you need to make sure that you explain your method in the research methods section. Okay, but what sort of information you should have? Okay, okay, be wary for the research method. The paper evaluators are all academics, so they will be able to detect any irregularities or inconsistency in the method. Let's say you are doing interview, but in the research method you highlight you are doing quantitative. So quantitative and interview is not matched, because I've seen papers like that highlighted that they are actually doing qualitative, and then they explain they just do survey. So again, doesn't match. Okay, and there are researchers that indicate or claim that they are doing triangulation, mixed method, but what they explain is just interview. Maybe they did do mixed method for the research for their PhD, in which they have interview, they have survey, but then on the paper they're just going to discuss on the survey findings. So make sure in the method you talk only quantitative. You don't talk mixed method when you only talk about one type of method. Okay, later on. Okay, so be careful. Okay, the readers are wide-ranging, from the student to well-established academia. So make sure that your methods are clearly explained. If your explanation is good enough, research method, even the student who are actually learning will be able to understand, will be able to apply your techniques for your research. But this section should not be too lengthy, should not be too technical. Okay, visualize what you want to express. You can draw a flowchart, but you don't actually have to put the flowchart in. The flowchart is just perhaps to help you discuss or narrate what you have done. unless if the flow chart, unless if the process is unique, something new, something different, something people rarely do, then you can have the flow chart inside your paper. If it's just a common flow chart, meaning that from literature goes to interview, interview goes to analysis, analysis go to refine. If it's just a normal flow chart, no need to put in your papers. Okay. And then justify every sentences and detail with references. So make sure that when you explain, everything must have. It's good to have. It's good to have what you call references to assist you. Okay. Don't write too much, and keep the writing simple and straight to the point. Okay. And then remember that the readers were not there when you conduct the research. That's why, because sometimes when you do the research, you have the process all in your head. Okay. So you know what happened next. But when you write, you did not really convey the information. So because the person is not doing the research, the person that read is not doing the research, they might get confused of what you're actually doing, because maybe you skip certain process because you don't want your research method to be too long, you skip certain process. Okay. So bear in mind, you have to write in the way it's simple, straightforward, but it covers all the important parts to make sure that people don't confuse. And write in past tense and passive voice. Never refer yourself or co-researchers in the text. For example, I, we, don't put in your text, not just in the research method, anywhere in your paper. Okay, so don't refer yourself. So this is just an example of research method, the flowchart, because they think that this is different, they have a different method, that's why they put in the flowchart. So the content of your research method, basically you have to talk about the approach you use, quantitative, qualitative, the method that you use, case study, interviews, focus group, survey, that one is a method, sampling method, data analysis technique, and if you have additional information such as location of the study, criteria of selected respondents, duration of the study, demographic information. So if you can have this, maybe you can add on. Okay, but these are the components that should be in your research method section. Okay, so is my research method selection adequate? So you need to make sure that it covers all of this: research approach, research method, sampling, analysis technique, validity, and reliability. Okay. So the results are basically, it's good for you to present your result in the sequence of your objective. If the paper objective is to show 1, challenges, number 2, strategy, number 3 is competency. So you present your finding based on that objective. Okay. And then you can divide the results into several sections according to the objectives to make sure that it follow the sequence, so the readers won't get confused. And then usually build up your findings from small findings to more crucial. Okay, and then you can use figures, you can use diagram, bar chart, whatever, to actually present your finding in a more attractive way. And you can use table to provide summary, ranking, or list of your findings. And referencing figures and tables in the text, make sure the figures and table are easy to understand. Okay, sometimes people tend to put the tables, tend to put the figures, but did not highlight in the text. They just expect that the readers see the table and understand on their own. So you need to put in the narrative form, okay, the table 4.1 summarizes blah, blah, blah. So you have to highlight. Then you have the table. So you lead the reader to your table. And almost there, we have discussion. Okay, discussion, there should not be any subsection. Only one, discussion, and then the whole is narration. Okay, unless if you have table or anything in discussion, it's fine. But there shouldn't be any subsection. Okay, the subsection only at the subsection is only at the findings, the result part, and then discussion is one long paragraph over paragraph. Okay, discuss the result and link them with the previous literature. Okay, bear in mind, when you are discussing your result, there shouldn't be any references. Okay, because that is a raw data. I'm talking about the research paper. And then discuss if the findings matches the literature. If it doesn't match, or a new result entirely. So you have to explain that. If new result, you need to highlight that. what it means is that when you do discussion, sometimes most of the mistakes that the people are actually doing when they do discussion is like they are writing another literature review. Actually, it's not. Okay, you have your literature. The literature guide you to your fieldwork. Okay, from the fieldwork we have new information. So the discussion is actually the discussing of your new information. And the discussion part, when you want to relate to the literature, it doesn't have to be reflecting back to your literature review chapter. It could be extending further based on your finding. Okay, you are actually discussing your finding and discuss that in connection with perhaps other authors, other writers, other literature. So it's not another section for literature review. It's a discussion. You discuss, you relate. That's it. Okay, conclusion is basically just wrap it up. Okay, remind readers what this paper has achieved. Okay, highlight again the important results in making the conclusion. Highlight the main contribution. Okay, if it's theoretical and practical, you have to highlight both. Indicate any research limitation. Indicate future research. Okay. Again, for conclusion, don't copy paste. Same as abstract. Don't copy paste from any part of the manuscript. Do not introduce any new information, because sometimes you have your discussion, you have your findings, you have your discussion, and then when you conclusion, all of a sudden you have new information. You come up with a future research which is proposed future research which is not connected to your findings. So that is introducing new information. You shouldn't do that in conclusion. Okay. And do not use in conclusion, in summary in this section. It is a conclusion on its own anyway, right? So, and if the paper research comes from a grant, you need to have an acknowledgement. Okay, this one you have to talk to your supervisors. What sort of things that you have to write in your acknowledgement. Author profile. Okay, this one depends on journal. Some journals want just a biography. Some journal want biography with a photo. Okay. Some journal doesn't want any biography, but it's just information on affiliation, current post, research area, contact information. So it depends. Some journal want CV. Okay. So it depends on the journal, right? References, different journal would have a different style. Okay. Some of high ranking journal, they don't actually bother on the template of the paper yet. They just want you to submit because the chances of being accepted is low. So instead of you do according to their template, follow everything to the letter, your references, and you submit after 1 week, receive rejection. So it's a waste of time. So usually high Q1 journals, for example, sometimes they just want you submit based on whatever template you have. When once it's accepted, then you change it to the template of their respective journal, because they don't want you to waste time. Okay. But having said that, most of the journal would have their own reference style, so you have to follow that. So that's the end of my session. I just want to give an overview of the sequence of paper process. First thing first, when I mentioned about deciding angles, so you decide which paper what topic you want to go for. Is it conceptual? Is it research? And then after you decide your angle, you find out which journal that most likely that you want to go for, narrow into 3 journals. Okay. And then after that, you start writing the paper, look at the structure and follow the structure, you start writing the papers. Okay. So after the writing the papers, when you write all the papers until the end, and then you follow the template that once you decided which journal you want to go for, after you complete the paper, you follow the template. Then adjust. That one will take maybe a couple of days once you complete according to the template. And of course, this one is after your supervisor has approved. Okay, you have to pass to your supervisor. Of course, she or he will advise how to improve it further. Let's say this is all done. So the paper has been polished, looks good already. Follow the template that you have, that the journal wants. Then the process of submitting. The process of submitting can also be tedious. Okay, because in good journals like Taylor Francis, Springer, they have their own database. They have their own platform for you to submit, and they have their own sequence. So you have to register yourself. If this is the first time you are submitting to that journal, you have to register and then become the author, and then you have to submit according to the system. Okay, the system will guide you. You have to submit manuscript without authors. Then you have to submit your acknowledgement. You have to submit your paper, your tables, your figures. So you just follow the sequence until submit. Okay. So after you submit, you would be given a notification that your paper has been submitted. Then you feel relief. Okay, done. After so many months of doing the paper, working on the paper, finally it's submitted. Then you just have to wait. If let's say there's something wrong with the format, it will bounce back. The editor will pass back to you within 2-3 days for you to resubmit. Let's say maybe you do not have enough information when you submit the paper, or maybe you skip certain section or whatever, so you have to amend and then resubmit. But if there is no bouncing, the editor will go into the panel of reviewers. It will take about 3 to 6 months if it's a good journal, or maybe 2 to 3, it depends on the journal actually. So let's say 4 months, then they will get back to you with the decision, whether it's accepted, whether it's minor correction, whether it's major correction, and whether it's rejection. If you get major correction, don't despair, at least you are still in the running. Okay, you just need to do the corrections. The correction may seem tedious, but it's actually doable. Just really sit down, think of all the comments that you have, try to work on the correction bit by bit. Always go for the simple one before you go for the difficult one, because if you start with difficult one, you might get demotivated. Always go for the simple one and then you go for the difficult one. Then after you do all the corrections, you resubmit, and then perhaps wait another few months because there will be another round of reviews. Best case scenario, when you submit the second one, maybe it's just only up to editor, because if it's minor, maybe it's just up to the editor, and if editor agrees, then your paper will be accepted. If it go back into the pool of reviewers, will take another maybe 3 or 4 months. And then if it's finally accepted, then it's good. It's good for you. Maybe then you have your paper accepted. But if it's rejected, then you have to maybe plan out again, look at all the reviews that they have given to you, amend the paper, and then submit to a different journal. Don't discard the paper because the paper has gone through so many processes. It means that somehow it's nearly there. It's just that maybe it's not suitable for that journal. Try to find other journals. Try to target for high journals first before you move slightly down, but not too down, but slightly down. Okay, maybe from Q1 goes to Q2, not Q1 goes to none index. Okay, so that's the whole process. It may take 6 months just to get all that process from the starting point until the paper is submitted or maybe accepted. Okay, so with that, I end my session.